Tuesday, July 15th. Here, right down smack dab in the middle of summer, and we find ourselves in the middle of SEC Media Days as the Texas Longhorns contingent of stars, including head coach Steve Sarkisian, star linebacker Anthony Hill, star quarterback Arch Manning, and star safety Michael Taft took the stage today in Atlanta for their portion of SEC Media Days, along with Georgia's portion of SEC Media Days earlier on in the day. And so there are a ton of storylines coming out of both Sark's press conference and the players' press conference. Plus, we've got lots of recruiting to discuss today as Texas landed two massive commitments earlier today in the form of five-star linebacker from Graysonville, Georgia, Tyler Atkinson, and James Johnson, a five-star interior defensive lineman from the Miami Metroplex. We've got all that and more on today's episode of the Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports. Hopefully you guys enjoy. If you like what we do here, your one-stop shop for Texas Longhorns news and coverage associated with the Texas Longhorns football team, especially during the months, late summer months, all the way through football season. Please make sure you like and subscribe. And the most important thing, we are launching a new channel, a separate channel for Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports. That'll be up sometime this week. We will be posting these episodes on both of our channels until football season starts. So make sure you get over there and like and subscribe to that channel before then, because once football season starts, they will only be posted on that channel. So with all that being said, as we got a lot to get into, I waste no time and I bring in my fantastic co-host.
It sucks recording
live from a coffee shop somewhere in Austin.
I'm a little bit
Mr. Jaime Nixon.
uncomfortable.
What's up, man?
And like I'm at a coffee shop that's like open 24 hours. So there's like a ton of people here. They're all, working quietly, and I'm just talking about football, man.
Well, if there are any Longhorn fans, they can
imagine.
If you see any Longhorn fans, there's someone wearing a Texas shirt. They're welcome to voice their opinion. But anyways, that would kind of be random and out of the blue. Man, where do we even start today? We got to start with recruiting, because that's what's hot off the presses, especially today. You want to start with Tyler Atkinson, or do you want to start with James Johnson? Both big-time commitments, out-of-state commitments added to this Texas class today. They go out and they get their top linebacker prospect, Tyler Atkinson, and I guess that's where we can start. Emmy, when you think about Tyler Atkinson,
think of speed,
and if
and
you've
just
watched his film, what are your initial thoughts on
three
Texas
straight years
getting
of Texas
the Grayson,
landing, like
Georgia
an elite
product?
linebacker prospect? Like last year, Bo Barnes. 2 years ago, obviously Anthony Hill, and now Tyler Atkinson. I mean, it's a 6'2", 205. I mean, he's probably going to get up to 220, 225 by the time he gets on the field his freshman year. I mean, the dude is incredible. I mean, this is a huge get for Texas. This was like, was he a consensus 5-star?
Well, he's a 5-star by at least two of the five recruiting services, or two of the four, recruiting services, 24/7 and On3. I know for sure, and I believe Rivals as well. Like, this guy is a consensus 5-star prospect. And if he's not rated a 5-star by any of the services or one of the services, I'm not sure what ESPN has. I think he will be. Look, this is a guy that wasn't even planning originally to take an official visit to Texas. But the week of that June 20th through 22nd official visit weekend, Texas was able to convince him to take an official visit. And he's always had kind of an affection for Texas ever since Texas first hosted him for an unofficial visit last fall. And he's been working out in Austin. He's got a great relationship with former Texas linebacker and NFL Hall of Fame linebacker Derek Johnson. He's been working out in Austin during the summer, over the summer, living in Austin, so he obviously loves the city. And him, Sarkisian, who really took charge of this recruitment over the last month or two, along with Pete Kwiatkowski, Johnny Nansen, the co-defensive coordinator and linebackers coach, really kind of picked up the heat on this recruitment once Texas missed out on both Braden Rouse and Xavier Griffin last week. Xavier Griffin, another five-star linebacker who goes to Alabama, stays in state. Texas really wanted that kid, but he ended up staying in state. And then Braden Rouse, another super blue chip kind of linebacker from the state of Georgia. He ends up committing to Tennessee, the other UT. So it was really important. Once that happened, Texas really picked up the heat on Tyler Atkinson. But I think a lot of factors played into this. His relationships, the fact that he's been in Austin and loves the city. And of course, we have to talk about it. NIL and the money that he's going to make is significant. This did not come cheap. Who is Tyler Atkinson? Well, I think he's the best linebacker in this class, all around. Right now, he measures at about 6'2", 210, 215, which is kind of right in the sweet spot historically for highly rated super blue chip linebackers, the guys who convert at the highest rates into being NFL draft picks are typically between 6'2", 210 to 6'2", 6'3", 220. That's kind of where they fall historically. I think he's got an opportunity to really fill out his frame, but he just pops off the screen, making plays sideline to sideline. Really good. You know, when he hits you, you're not moving. You're going down right away. He plays with a nastiness to him, which I love. I don't know that he is like a clone of Anthony Hill. I don't know that he has the same versatility that Anthony Hill provides, and that you can also take Anthony Hill, move him around, put him on a tight end, put him even on a wide receiver, have him drop into pass coverage. You can have him blitz off the edge as an edge, and he can go get the quarterback. I don't know if he's quite that versatile in his skill set. But what I do know is this guy's going to come in, probably contribute right away. That's what I project him to be. A guy who contributes right away. Doesn't mean he necessarily starts right away, because you also got a guy like Bo Barnes. You also have a guy like Brad Spence. You have Leona LaFau. And I'm sure Texas will, Ty Anthony Smith, I'm sure Texas will continue to search for linebackers in this class. They just got Kosi Okpala, a linebacker from the state of Texas, last week. And so, he'll have competition to start, but I think he'll play a similar role to what Anthony Hill did his freshman year. That he might not start a lot of games unless there's injuries, but he will be playing a lot of snaps and contributing. It's kind of a see ball, hit ball, go pop some people, go stop the run. Because sideline to sideline, this is as good as you can get. So I love that he's a Longhorn. I think out of all the needs in this recruiting class, given that Anthony Hill is, barring some massive disaster, going to the NFL next year as a likely first-round pick, that's kind of what I see him being. It was very important. Linebacker was a top 3 need in this recruiting class for me, along with left tackle. And you can argue, either tight end or maybe defensive line. Of course, those are always important positions. But left tackle and linebacker were 2 of the most important positions. And Texas has filled those needs. John Turntine, a super blue chip, and Tyler Atkinson, a consensus 5-star. So credit to Pete Kwiatkowski, credit to Steve Sarkisian, credit this Texas staff for once again capitalizing And now the stove is hot all of a sudden on the recruiting trail because Texas wasn't done after getting Atkinson today. They also were able to flip one of their top defensive line targets. They missed on Lamar Brown, one of I'd say the best defensive lineman in the class. That's what I think, but some people don't. But their second top target, James Johnson, a guy who they had on an official visit from Miami, Florida, who they really, really like, who they thought they had lined up for a commitment. I think it was either last month or the month before when he committed to Georgia. They were able to flip him today out of nowhere. I didn't see it coming. I don't know that a lot of people in the industry saw it coming. Maybe later on in December or later on in the fall. But they were able to flip him. This is a guy who isn't ranked as a 5-star by all the recruiting services like Atkinson, but he is recruited as a 5-star, or he is ranked that way by Rivals, who just came out with their new Rivals 300 rankings. From the state of Florida, he makes for the fourth commitment on the interior defensive line in this class, and I think he's the best one to this point. So, Emmy, I'll go ahead and ask you. When you watch James Johnson, or from what you've seen or heard about him,
explosiveness.
What do you think of his commitment to the Horns?
In terms of a first step, but also just like the second and third step. Like he just pounds people, for lack of a better term. Like I think his presence just wears on offensive lines throughout a game, and you want that kind of guy on your team. I mean, he's just huge. He has kind of a deceptive quickness as well. He's able to kind of convert that speed to power, but also can kind of convert that long arm move or that swim move into kind of that side step, almost like a Euro step, and get into the backfield as well. I think he has the, all the traits you could ever want from a defensive tackle. I mean, I think the main takeaway for me is the question I've started to ask myself is Texas moving to the SEC all of a sudden made it easier to recruit all of these out-of-state, stud prospects from Georgia, Alabama, Ole Miss, all those, states where they have all this recruiting talent? Has it made it easier for Texas to do that?
Well, I certainly think in most ways the answer is yes. There's a lot of factors that go into that, of course, but being in the SEC where the top talents in the Southeast want to play their college football careers, what's been the most dominant conference for over the last 20 years consistently of having the most guys drafted into the NFL, regardless of what you thought, Big Ten versus SEC, which conference was better last year. Once again, the SEC had the most players drafted. It continues to put players into the NFL year after year. And so, yeah, I think Texas being in the SEC instead of the Big 12 definitely helps that. But when you think, to answer your question, there's a couple things I want to say on James Johnson. And then I've got a hot take. I don't even know if it's a hot take at this point. When you look at James Johnson, I think what you see is a guy who Texas clearly thinks can contribute right away, because they wouldn't have gone after him in the way they did, with the urgency that they did, with the money it likely took to get him away from Georgia and flip him at this point in the recruiting cycle. They wouldn't have done all that behind the scenes with their current recruiting strategy without thinking that highly of him. I think he's a guy that when he comes in as a freshman will be playing significant snaps for the Longhorns, or should be. And if he's not, what does that mean? Well, maybe it's just that Texas is all of a sudden very deep on the defensive line, because they're going to have Justice Terry, they're going to have Alex January back next year, they're going to have Hero Canoe back. They're going to have Josiah Sharma. Like, they're going to have numbers at the defensive line position. Levon Johnson. But what Texas is telling you by flipping this guy from Georgia and the price tag that it took to flip him from Georgia at this point in the recruiting cycle, still 5 months plus away from signing day, what they're telling you is, we think James Johnson is a guy that can play for us right now. Because that's how they're approaching this. We're going to get into the recruiting strategy and their philosophy here in a minute. But I agree with them. He explodes off the line of scrimmage. He's got elite burst in the short area, which is what you want out of your defensive lineman. He can chase down ball carriers from behind in pursuit. He hits top gear pretty quickly, which I think sets him apart from some of the other defensive line commits that Texas has right now. He's got great hand usage. He's really good at shedding blockers. The first play, literally, on his 2024 film, if you go watch it, on his 2024 huddle film, is him just pushing literally a guard into the backfield, sitting him on his ass, and going to make a tackle for loss. That's all you really, that's like if you just watch that play, you kind of get what you're getting in James Johnson. But the point here is, as we go into kind of the recruiting philosophy that Texas is taking here, Texas wouldn't have, with the price tag that I know it took to flip him from Georgia, as Georgia was giving him a significant amount of money, or was going to flip him on July 15th didn't come cheap. Texas probably spent in the range of like $3 million today for 2026 on elite of the elite guys for the 2026 defense. Both guys, I think, will contribute right away. But I've got a hot take. I don't even know if this is a hot take. I think it can legitimately be argued that Texas is recruiting the defensive side of the ball better than any school in the country, and I don't think that it's particularly close at this point with what they've done over the last 3 cycles. If you just think about it, next year, from an underclassman standpoint, Justice Terry, consensus 5-star. James Johnson, 5-star. Tyler Atkinson, 5-star. Consensus 5-star. Anthony Hill will be gone, but Colin Simmons, consensus 5-star. Lance Jackson, consensus 5-star. Richard Wesley, consensus 5-star. Kobe Black, consensus 5-star. Cade Phillips, 5-star. Jonah Williams, consensus 5-star. And I'm not done yet. I just think that, like, I don't know of a school in the country, maybe you do, maybe someone else does, but I don't know a school in the country that's recruiting elite of the elite defensive prospects the way, or at the level and at the rate that Texas is accruing this kind of talent on the defensive side of the ball. It's a credit to the hires that Steve Sarkisian has made on that side of the ball, including Kenny Baker, the new defensive line coach, Johnny Nansen, the co-defensive coordinator and linebackers coach, Pete Kwiatkowski, especially the defensive coordinator. Like, their evaluations on these kids and the way that they're recruiting them and able to convert them now into NFL players, it's pretty damn impressive. And, you know, last year I think that's something you could say about the whole recruiting class, but especially on the offensive side of the ball with what they were able to do at the wide receiver position.
It's been
the
so
defensive
consistent,
recruiting
too,
has just been off
class.
the charts. It's pretty unbelievable. Yep. So, like, and look, Texas is going to be aggressive in the portal. So, like, they could go and get guys who have, you know, all-American kind of players who could supplement all the young players that they already have. But, yeah, really exciting day. And they're not done this week. I'll just say that. They're not done getting 5 stars this week. So with all that being said, where do we go next? I mean, do you want to talk a little bit about this recruiting strategy?
Yeah,
or
let's
do you
go
want
to that
go over to
strategy
Sark's
next.
press
I think
conference?
that flows straight into it. I think the interesting part about, yeah, so
You want to
earlier
kind of introduce
today,
it?
Sark had a quote basically saying, you can't pay everybody. You have a cap, and you have to look at things from a long-term standpoint, instead of, just wanting to offer whatever to whoever. They have to look at things very strategically with how they want this program, to last for the long term. And part of that, he even admitted, has hurt them in recruiting a little bit, because they don't, emphasize the NIL stuff as much as some other, universities may do. And the guys that are coming into campus that, want to discuss that stuff, they push all that stuff to the end, and it's often maybe not what the other schools are offering from an NIL standpoint. So, but I think what that does, though, I think the positive of that is you end up with guys who want to stick around for their duration of their college careers at Tech. Like, stay with Texas for 3 years and 4 years. We're seeing that, with this current team now, right? We have a bunch of guys that, like, even Arch, like, he sat and waited for 2 years, and is, waited his turn. Now is going to get to play as a junior. You don't really see that too often.
Yeah, all great points. Basically, the nuts and bolts of it are behind the scenes. If you really dig into what's happening behind the scenes, and it can explain, sometimes an excuse is just a reason that something happens. This can kind of explain why Texas maybe hasn't or isn't going to have maybe as deep of a recruiting class as last year. But their top 8 to 10 prospects in this recruiting class are going to be guys that they think can go toe-to-toe with any other program's top 8 to 10 guys in their respective recruiting classes. This year, Texas is trying to budget, right, with the new world that we live in terms of revenue sharing and NIL, with the new, revenue sharing house settlement that was just put into effect recently. Texas wants to have enough money to retain all of their key players that are projected to return next year. And they're not going to overspend on unproven high school players who still potentially, who they think either need 1 or 2 years of development and aren't ready to play right away, or just aren't on the level of guys that can step in right away and contribute in some form or fashion to the 2026 roster. Because what is Texas trying to do in these next 1 to 2 years? They have a window here with Arch Manning. That is and we expect Arch Manning to be back next year. He could go to the draft if he has a monstrous season, but it's been reported, over the last couple years, ever since he's been at Texas, this guy's going to start 2 years. So if we just say, for sake of argument, that he starts this year, 2025, and he comes back next year, 2026, the kids in this class will be freshmen next year. What Texas is trying to do is they're trying to retain the key players on their roster next year so that, one, they put themselves in the best position possible to compete for a national championship again. If you think about all the players who won't be eligible to go to the draft after this year that Texas wants to retain, Colin Simmons, Trevor Gooseby if he were to come back, but that's probably unlikely. He's probably one of the guys who likely goes to the draft. But like a Ryan Wingo, a Colin Simmons, a CJ Baxter, all of these kinds of guys who might want to return next year. The Jelani McDonalds of the world. Like, there are a bunch of guys on this roster that they want to retain after this year so that they can put themselves in the best position to compete for a national title, because they're trying to capitalize on this 1 to 2 year window that they have with Arch Manning. and they have a roster that ranks in the top 3 of college football when it comes to high-end, super blue chip level talent. So retaining all those players does not come cheap. They got to have enough money to do that, and then they've got, a certain amount of money that they can spend to go get the elite of the elite recruits, but it's not as easy as it was 5 years ago to build out a roster like Georgia, where you just have like super blue chips galore on your second team and your third team. I mean, there was a point in time where Georgia had 40, close to 50 super blue chips on their roster, just loaded. That's not happening anymore. Texas is putting a big time emphasis on roster retention because they have so much talent on campus and they're trying to capitalize on a championship contending window, right? And they're just not going to overspend for everyone. The guys they want, sure. I think we saw that today. The guys they really, really want, yes, they will whip out the wallets. But you just can't, like Emmy said, like what Sark said, you can't do that with every single guy. You kind of have to pick your poison. And I like the strategy by Texas. Why wouldn't you want to retain the players who have gotten you to 2 consecutive national semifinals? Why wouldn't you want to retain all these players that you've put years and years of blood, sweat, and tears recruiting and that are developing into future NFL players? Why would you want to let those guys go elsewhere? You want to have the budget to retain most of those players. You might not be able to retain every single player. That's just the world that we live in. But your main guys, your Colin Simmons of the world, I mean, yes. So would I rather have, just think about this, would I rather have Colin Simmons or would a known commodity who might have 15 sacks next year, had 9 sacks as a true freshman, was a freshman All-American? Or do I want Felix Ojo, a guy who projects to be really good, to one day be an NFL player, but am I going to offer him more money than Colin Simmons when he hasn't proven a damn thing on a college football field, much less the SEC? They just have to kind of pick it. I'm not saying anything bad about Felix Ojo. It's just
exactly. I know exactly what you're saying.
Kind of the philosophy and the approach Texas is taking. And one more thing on this before we move on, unless you have anything else you want to add.
Yeah. Go ahead.
People behind the scenes at Texas believe, well, they don't believe, they know, based on what's happened in the past couple years and the guys that they've been able to flip, they think, they know that some programs didn't call anyone out in particular, but some of these programs who are throwing around big time money right now, left and right, are making promises that they're not going to be able to keep when signing day comes in December. And they think they're going to be ready to capitalize on that because they've properly budgeted for roster retention and they haven't overextended themselves in July for a bunch of players who are unproven. So
And
I like how the staff is. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I like what this does from a culture standpoint as well. If you think about within that locker room, if you go out and pay Felix Ojo $6 million, I don't like having to pick on him, but it's just, it's just part of it. He got paid $6 million. If you go out and pay Felix Ojo that money, you've got everybody else in the locker room looking at it sideways, I played in the SEC last year and I proved this. Where's my money? I think one of the things Sark said in his press conference too is they want to be a culture that rewards results, man. I think if you go out and you play well on the field at Texas, you're going to get rewarded for that. You're going to get your recognition. You're going to get the, I guess, restitution. That's not the right word, but I guess the gratuity, I guess.
The recognition. Absolutely. Yeah, man. It helps from a culture standpoint. And I think one of the biggest compliments you can give Steve Sarkisian and this entire coaching staff when it comes to recruiting, both in the portal and through high school, is every single year they're adapting. They're not changing their entire philosophy one way or the other. They're not making wholesale changes. But with the constant changing landscape today in college football, they're tweaking stuff every single year to try and get better, to try to refine their approach, so that they continue to put up top 5 class after top 3 class after top 5 class. Because that's how you win. That's how you win national championships. At first when they got to Texas, because the roster was so bare compared to what it is now, they would take, for example, like they would take guys like Troy O'Meary or, the second and third stringers from Alabama, trying to just get whatever they could on the roster to try to fill up the roster with more talent than what was on the roster when he took the job. But now, in the portal, they're actually going after guys who like contribute right away. Top guys in the portal is what they're competing for. Not kind of the scraps from the elite programs of past, kind of what they did when they first got to Texas. And in some ways, they didn't really have a choice when they first got to Texas. But the point is, like, they've continued to kind of adapt their approach slightly every single year. Being adaptable is the one thing you gotta be. Pretty much in all sports nowadays, but especially in college football, because every single day, and not a whole lot of us like it, the sport's changing. There are new rules. There's a new house settlement. There's new this, new that. New rules with, scholarship limits in each conference. You just got to be able to adapt. Sark and company do that, I think, as good or better than anyone does at this point. So credit to them. Okay. Do you want to jump into a little bit of Sark, or do you want to go into some freshman updates? Let's talk about maybe talk a little bit about the 2025 recruiting class, the freshmen that are now on campus.
Yeah, let's touch on the freshmen.
Okay. We'll touch on some freshmen real quick what's that?
Just for about we got 20 minutes before we got to wrap this up.
Yeah, we'll be done, I think, in less than that. There are a bunch of freshmen from last year's number 1 ranked recruiting class that are impressing in summer workouts. And once we get into fall camp here in about 2 weeks or so, we'll have much more kind of like in detail updates on a lot of these players. Because right now it's just summer workouts. So, working out in shorts and t-shirt, kind of starting to learn the playbook, players working out together, players getting stronger, developing, kind of getting in shape for the season. But what we do know is we talked about linebackers today with the commitment of Tyler Atkinson earlier on in the episode. Well, last year's linebacker from the state of Texas, Elijah Bo Barnes, call him Bo Barnes, was reported by multiple, I've confirmed this with multiple Texas high-level reporters, that he was reported to run at 238 pounds in summer workouts last week. He was running in the upper 21 mile per hour range, which is just freakish for his size as a super athletic 5-star linebacker from last year's class. And then the other updates have to do with the receiver position. Kaliq, Lockett, and Jaime Ffrench have made big jumps since the spring. They've benefited from the weight room and route running coaching from Coach Chris Jackson, and the light bulb is starting to switch on for both of those guys. There are other freshmen that are impressing as well, but those are all kind of like super blue chip 5-star guys, really kind of the bulk of the recruiting class. Any thoughts on Kaliq, Lockett, Jaime Ffrench, Bo Barnes? and what we've kind of heard, the little that we've heard from those freshmen during summer workouts?
Well, I'll start with Bo Barnes. I mean, I think him being on campus goes a little bit under the radar because it's the linebacker position. I mean, I think wide receiver is just a little bit more flashy. You want to talk about, obviously Kaliq, Lockett and what they bring to the table, and Jaime Ffrench, of course. But Bo Barnes, his ability as a linebacker to kind of play linebacker, but also have the ability to play some box safety as well, have that versatility. I mean, the speed, you mentioned it, the 21 miles per hour, I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, the thing that popped in my head is like, can we put the ball in his hands at some point? It's not ever going to happen, but my gosh, like the ability of some of the dudes on this roster is just ridiculous. I'm so excited to watch this team this year.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I'd have to double check this, but I think Bo Barnes did actually play, believe it or not, some offense while he was in high school. I think he played some running back. On three had him as coming out of high school last year. They had him as the best linebacker in the country. So if you really think about it, Texas has technically landed as long as the Atkinson commitment sticks. And you can never be 100% sure nowadays, but I think it will. They've landed the number one linebacker in the country 3 consecutive years. That's unbelievable. But he was the best linebacker in the country by on 3. And I just wonder, like, my thing with him, like, I knew he was a physical freak with the sideline to sideline, play and the mental evaluation, things of that nature coming out of high school. But he really made some noticeable progressions in his development during spring football. Had a couple interceptions in spring during scrimmages. Just generally speaking, he's really kind of flipped the light switch on. And I wonder, like, going into fall camp with even more reps, with 50 more practices of reps for this kid, as talented as he is, I don't think he's earning a starting job this year unless an injury happens and maybe he could compete for one. But I wonder if he gets on the field. Because at this rate, it feels like he could absolutely do that. He's competing with guys like Ty Anthony Smith. He's competing with guys like Brad Spence, a guy who's played SEC football. Ty Anthony Smith, I think that's kind of his main competition to see snaps this year. But like with what he's doing in practice, I wouldn't be surprised if we see some of Bo Barnes. Especially in those games against like UTEP and San Jose State earlier on in the season. Like if you're up by 30 in the fourth quarter, get that guy in the field and just let him play football. Let him get some reps in a college football game. So I guarantee you, like he'll be one of the best guys on the field. And maybe even if you're up, enough in an SEC game, let him get some SEC experience. And the same thing applies to the receivers. Like, I don't know. I still don't know. We'll have to wait into fall camp to see, like, the role allocation that's going to take place at the receiver position. Like, where Jaime Ffrench is going to slot in, how many snaps he's going to play, where Kaliq Lockett is going to play. We'll want to see, like, more of them on video, catching footballs with Arch Manning, how they're working into the offense. But, like, those are two guys you can get super excited about, along with Michael Terry, another 5-star who kind of projects to play some tight end, kind of as, like, that Y flex. But, yeah, it's just, like, this is what happens. When you recruit at the level Texas does, you've got guys who project to be early NFL draft picks someday, in 3 years, 4 years. And when the light switch flips on for them, this is what happens. Because they're just better athletically, physically, and at the game of football than everyone else is. So yeah, I mean, I'm really excited about what I'm hearing, but we really won't get into like the bulk of like the football aspect of it. We really can't until we see fall practice. Um, Anything else you want to ask me or any other freshmen you maybe want to talk about before
I have a
we?
trivia question for you, actually.
Okay, go ahead.
So the last time Texas landed 2 5-star recruits in the same recruiting class was in 2010. Can you name the 2 players? I'll give you a hint. One of them is a 10-year NFL vet, and the other became an All-American.
Malcolm Brown, is that one of them? No.
Not from that time period, though, but that's not one of them, no.
Okay, what positions are they?
Both linebackers. Yeah, one of them, the 10-year vet in the NFL, played for the Minnesota Vikings last year.
Jordan Hicks?
Mm-hmm.
Is that one of them?
That's one. Yep. And then the other one, his initials are JJ. I feel like you'll know it when I say it.
Yeah, just go ahead and say it.
Jackson Jeffcoat. Yeah, that's probably
I
a
might have
name we
gotten
haven't heard
that.
in a while. But when I heard that trivia earlier on Texas football, I thought I'd throw it at you, see what you
No,
get.
that's good trivia. I know Jackson Jeffcoat, but that's probably not a name I would have guessed. But Jordan Hicks for sure. I needed to get that one at the very least. Because he's still playing, right? I mean, he's still a really good
yeah,
player.
he's on Cleveland now. Yeah.
Yeah, that guy's made a heck of a lot of money and made a good, career out of it. Love to see that.
Definitely.
Um,
Yeah.
Before we wrap things up, I know you said you got something to get to around 9. It's 8:20 Central. Um, any thoughts on what any of the Texas contingency had to say at SEC Media Days today, whether that be Sark as kind of the head of the crew, or Arch Manning, or Anthony Hill, or any of those guys?
Well, I think when Sark was kind of speaking on the mindset of the players and the fact that they purposely recruit winners so that there is no complacency, because a lot of the reporters, they were asking about, oh, how does this team keep from getting complacent. He mentioned Michael Taft, Trey Wisner, all these guys that won state titles in high school, and when you recruit guys like that and you lose in the semifinals, it's it hurts more because they expect to win. So I like that aspect of it, and I like that Sark mentioned that, and then that kind of trickled down to all the players that were speaking as well. They were speaking some of the same things.
Yeah, I agree. I think something Anthony Hill said really resonated with me. I gotta find the quote, but basically paraphrasing, he basically said, "We're focused on going 1-0 this year," meaning go 1-0 every single week. I love that approach mentally, because he's one of the leaders on this team. Maybe the best player on the team, period. Um, and Texas, and Sark mentioned this, like they have a tough schedule ahead of them. Compared to last year with the road games they gotta face. I mean, it's with all the talent they're replacing, especially offensively. Week 1, it's at Ohio State. Their first SEC game is down in the swamp at Florida. And if that's a healthy DJ Lagway, that could be a monster of a game. And then they got to play at Georgia. And Georgia's a team that kind of been their bugaboo ever since coming into the SEC, and kind of for the past couple matchups that they've played them. That's 3 road games you got to overcome. And you want to at least win one of those for sure. But it'd be nice to get 2, because then you give yourself more room to you don't want to trip up elsewhere, but if you were to trip up elsewhere on the schedule, you'd have more breathing room when it comes to the playoff. So I just think like that
Exactly.
approach, like we got to win today, doesn't matter next week. yet, because if we don't win today, next week becomes less important. Well, it kind of actually becomes more important, but you know what I mean. Like, if we don't win today, why does next week matter? I love what Anthony Hill, basically everything he had to say, just super humble. I didn't get to see a lot of Arch. I'm gonna have to go back and watch that. I bet it's
same here.
pretty boring. I think, and I think Sark and the entire Texas football team wants it to be that way. They don't want to create any headlines, because the hype is already going to be through the roof. It already is, and it's only going to continue to get bigger. And I think the last thing I'll say to kind of wrap us up is like I love kind of how Sark opened the press conference, running through the roster, and it kind of just reminded me like, wow, how far we have come since January of 2021 when Sarkisian was hired at Texas. When you just think about like Trey Wisner, no offense to the kid, but I mean, 3-star coming out of high school. Nobody really thought much of him coming out of high school, meaning like he wasn't an elite of the elite prospect. But that guy made himself into the leading rusher in the SEC last year, and kind of had to do it on a whim with the C.J. Baxter and Christian Clark injuries. And when you just think of that example, it kind of reminds you like how much talent is actually on this team. The fact that guy who wasn't a super blue chip, wasn't really close to being a super blue chip, was the leading rusher in the SEC last year. Like, what? That doesn't make any sense, or that's not supposed to make any sense.
Yeah, somehow I didn't even know that. I knew he was productive, but I did not know that.
I probably knew it, but I had forgotten it until he said it. And that just kind of reminded me like, wow, even with all the talent they just put into the NFL, Texas kind of becoming a factory. As much of a factory as you can basically have in today's era of college football in terms of turning high-level talent, getting high-level talent, and putting that talent in the NFL. Now they gotta keep doing it. They've only really done it for like 2 years now, but there's no signs that they're slowing down anytime soon. So until there's any signs of that, like you gotta believe they're gonna keep on doing this as long as they're at Texas. So there's a lot more that we could discuss, but I think that's kind of like the main things I wanted to get out of this podcast. Hopefully, you really enjoyed everything that we discussed today. Emmy, any parting shots before we wrap it up?
No, man. I think the takeaway from the day is like I'm drinking the burnt orange Kool-Aid. Like I'm ready to be delusional again. Like the time is now, man. Like I think this team is ready to win a national title this year, and I feel really, really good about it. And that's really crazy to say in July, but man, like it feels good to be a Texas fan right now.
Yes, it does. Wear the burnt orange proudly if you are a Texas fan, knowing that not just the football team
shirt, of course.
Not just the football team, but like almost every sport on campus is, we talked about this before, contending at a high level for national championships. We're less than 2 weeks from fall camp. We're less than 50 days until the Ohio State game. Next week, I'm sure we'll have a little more recruiting news to discuss. I do expect another commitment this week from a offensive prospect that's rated as a 5-star. I won't say who it is, but unless something changes in the next couple of days, I expect that to happen. But yeah, we'll have that and a lot more to discuss next week on Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports. But until then, my name is Michael Wein. That is my fantastic co-host, Emmy Nixon. We are your one-stop shop for Texas Longhorns game recaps, recruiting news, on and off the field news. We talk about it all here. And we're heading into football season. So obviously this is like the time of year that we enjoy the most. So until next week, this has been Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports. Enjoy the rest of your week. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Hook 'em.
Peace out.